Hi, I'm Debbie Georgatos. Welcome to my show, America, Can We Talk? Today, we're going to talk about a huge Flynn case ruling, but Dr. Kelli Ward, Arizona GOP Chair, joins me. A Venezuelan warns about statues and communism, and NASCAR Non-Noose. And of course, I'll tell you why these stories matter to you. Stay tuned.
Debbie Georgatos, host of America Can We Talk, is an author, attorney, and political analyst whose mission is to inspire the American political conversation about preserving liberty in the best country on earth.
And welcome again to America Can We Talk and to today's First Five. I'm Debbie Georgatos. Big ruling out of Washington, D.C. today. The D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals has ordered Judge Emmett Sullivan to dismiss the Flynn prosecution. This is great news, and if you watch my show, you know the whole long story. I want to hit just two quick points in today's First Five. Number one, this entire appeal should never have been necessary. It should not have been necessary for a federal district court judge to interfere with a decision, to step out of his role in the judicial branch of the three branches of government, to interfere with the decision by the prosecutor, the DOJ, to drop the charges against Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. This ruling should feel like well, of course they made that order. But the ruling was only 2-1. So of the three judges who got this case on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, the two appointed by Republicans agreed that we have to follow the rule of law. The one appointed on the Circuit Court of Appeals, the one judge appointed by a Democrat president, President Obama, said, nah, you know what, I think we ought to let this judge play around this case a little longer. But that's point one. This is great news for Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. It's good news. It shouldn't have to, we never should have had to go through this. We should have had the case dropped the moment the DOJ filed their motion asking for that. But my second point is this. This may not be over. And the reason I say that is this is a case in which the prosecution, now we know more than ever, really went after Lieutenant General Michael Flynn for political reasons. Went after him because he was part of the whole effort that the Obama DOJ, FBI engaged in to try to undermine President Donald Trump, to cast a pall over his presidency, to question the legitimacy of his presidency. It was a politically motivated prosecution to start with. Judge Emmett Sullivan's decision to refuse to enter the order dismissing the case was a political decision. So here they sit, they've got this order. There are other legal avenues available. And why I say, but maybe this isn't over, is I just don't know whether even in this context, you're going to see the district court, Judge Emmett Sullivan, actually willing to follow the law and dismiss this case with prejudice. I think there's probably some consideration ongoing whether or not they ought to try to move for an en banc hearing, meaning the entire D.C. Circuit Court of Appeal, all the judges sitting on that court, versus a three-judge panel, which is what they had so far, or some other extraordinary measure. I think it's possible they will do that. The reason it may not happen, the reason Emmett Sullivan might decide to surrender right now, is because, as you likely also heard very recently, the new evidence has come out. Magically, surprisingly, the Department of Justice has newly located notes by Peter Strzok, one of the main insiders who probably should be prosecuted in this case, as you have Barr and Durham investigating all that went on inside the FBI and the DOJ. New notes emerged, written by Peter Strzok, apparently approximately around January 4th of 2017, which are even more exculpatory of Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, meaning more evidence that the DOJ apparently withheld from the court, from the people for years now. We are here we are in 2020, and we're still talking about notes made in January 2017. The DOJ has just now turned over that make clear, in fact, the clear implication of the notes turned over. Notes by Peter Strzok appear that both President Obama, Vice President Biden were in on the plan to have the DOJ, the FBI, go after Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, try to bring him down. They were after it from the determination to continue charges, continue investigation of Flynn, and eventually bring charges in a case where Comey, who was then the FBI director, had actually said at the time, Comey said, it appears the conversations between Flynn and Kislyak, they appear legitimate. But yet in a meeting, notes made by Strzok, he's noting that Obama directly was involved, saying you have to have the right people on this case. You had Vice President Biden talking about, maybe we can still go after Flynn, go after Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. And so you had the highest levels of government still determined to go after Flynn. Maybe because of this evidence, and now more and more people Aware that the highest levels of the Democrat Party were in on the effort of the DOJ to frame Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, maybe Judge Emmett Sullivan will decide, you know what, I better just drop this now. I better quit while I'm ahead, because all sorts of chaos is about to emerge from the DOJ and the FBI. And he, Emmett Sullivan, does not want to be even more appear in the public eye, to be in the middle of perpetuating this fraud of a prosecution on Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. And that, my very fine friends, is today's First Five. Let's at the start of the show, we have a guest joining us, Dr. Kelli Ward. She has joined me numerous times on this show. I just love having her on. As you are thinking, I know that name. Well, she was elected as the GOP chairman in the state of Arizona. So she's a state chair of the GOP, just a person of endless energy and passion for the Republican Party, for conservative values, for American principles. She's a doctor, a medical doctor. She also formerly served as a member of the Arizona State Senate, a very dedicated patriot, now on board in Arizona, leading the GOP in the fight to hold on to Arizona, to have Arizona end up in that R column in 2020. But the reason I reached out to her and asked her to join me today is that she was at the Trump rally last night in Phoenix, Arizona. The Trump rally, which I'm going to hear more about it. I'm not even sure all the details of it, but I know she was there. So I have Kelli Ward online. Hello, Dr. Ward.
Hey, Debbie, it's great to be with you. And yes, yesterday was the whole day was exciting because we had the rally type atmosphere. It was actually the Students for Trump National Convention. So kids, between the ages of 16 and sorry to the people who don't think they're kids, but 16 to 30, they gathered together to celebrate that big government sucks, and that taxes, that are too high, and that they believe in faith, family, and freedom. And they were extremely blessed. We were extremely blessed to have the President of the United States join us at that Students for Trump convention and join us in the great state of Arizona.
Oh, I think it's the coolest thing ever. So, Kelli, at this event, you're saying it's called Students for Trump. So it's not affiliated formally with the GOP. It's just a group of young people, or is it a segment of the GOP, the group?
It is not a segment of the GOP or of the Republican Party of Arizona. They actually are very closely affiliated with Turning Point USA and Turning Point Action. So Turning Point Action is their political action arm, young people fighting for the things that make our country great. You may or may not have met Charlie Kirk yet, but if you haven't, he'd be a great person to have to come on and talk to your audience, because he started out as a very young person, ended up starting college, finding out that it was really very indoctrinating, and decided that he was going to rally the troops age group to save this nation. And he's just done a phenomenal job. And so he assists with the people. Ryan Fournier and Austin Smith here in Arizona are the heads of the Students for Trump organization, and they really put together quite an event yesterday.
So I know President Trump was in Arizona also to talk about the border wall, which we'll get to in a moment. But I have to tell you, for listeners and just for Americans generally who get concerned about the youth vote, they see all sorts of statistics and polls saying that whatever the numbers are of young people claim that they are socialists, or they think socialism might be a great idea to try or something. This group of Students for Trump they're kind of refreshing for everyone to see, wow, there are young people involved enough to show up at a rally in Arizona and get the amazing excitement to have the president appear there. So first of all, how many students, roughly speaking, do you think were there? How big was this?
It was about 3,000 kids that were there, the young people. There were a few older people there too, like me. The governor was there. Senator McSally was there. Our 4 congressional members that are Republicans were there. The head of our legislature on the House and the Senate side, both of them were also right there, as well as our state treasurer. So, you know, all the Republican officials got to be in the audience. And really, it was standing room only in that facility. The fire marshal, actually, Ryan Fournier, who's the head of Students for Trump, the founder, said that the fire marshal was keeping people out at the, before the beginning of the venue. So everybody who wanted to come in, unfortunately, wasn't able to because we had filled the building to capacity.
I love that. And also, on the subject of young people being involved in politics, we're going to talk later today about how many people get pushed around by the slogans of the left, the lies of the left. They think they're standing up for America when they're pushing things or embracing ideas that are actually un-American. So these people are on to Students for Trump, on to the message, I assume, of the Trump administration. So what kinds of things that President Trump said really brought the most applause or excitement out of these students? I mean, I'm trying to get the idea. They really understand policy far more deeply, these students do, than the average young person, maybe just a little bit involved, right? They're really into it.
Yeah, they're into it. They're into it like we are, and probably like a lot of people that are listening to you today. And I always tell people, the normal people haven't really engaged yet. And so these are the people that are like we are, that are engaged every minute of every day about what's going on politically. I will tell you, I think the biggest round of applause came when he said, defund Planned Parenthood. And the crowd went wild. So this is a pro-life crowd. They also really, really want the low taxes and they want the economic growth. They were 100% for that, and they were excited that he was down at the border wall, celebrating the 200th mile of completion of that big, beautiful wall, and they want immigration that's legal. They want to stop illegal immigration. They want to stop people coming into our country and taking jobs from them and from other people who came here the right way.
Love that. I mean, they just basically sound like informed Americans of all wonderful things. It's fabulous.
Oh, they are. He had 4 students come up and speak about how they'd been affected on their own campuses. They had a young man from the North Carolina State University who they were advertising because they were going to have a rally, and the Antifa people came and they sprayed him in the face with spray paint. And he said, imagine if this had been a group of kids in MAGA hats who had done the same thing to another group. It would have been on the news nonstop, but nobody even heard about this. They had a young lady who just graduated from college last year and was working in the insurance industry, made her views known about life and her conservative values on her Instagram account, and ended up losing her job because the left doxed her so badly. So, and then finally they had a young black girl that was working for Ilhan Omar's opponent in Minnesota, talking about how all lives matter and that the Black Lives Matter Inc. movement is nothing but propaganda. So it was really...
Wow, it just sounds extraordinary. I'm so glad you got to be there and got to observe all the excitement about it. I do want to shift and talk.
And I got to see the president, so that was really good.
Actually,
I had to get a COVID test before.
Oh, you did?
That was an experience in itself, with the jab the swab in your nose and spit it around. Uncomfortable, but not terrible. So I got to prove that I was negative. Talking to the president and telling him how great he's doing in Arizona.
Oh, I love that. And actually, Kelli, you have been blessed to have met our president more than once. I know you've been such a strong supporter of his since you first became involved. Since he first declared he was going to be running and during his campaign in 2016, I know you've been a strong supporter. And I'm sure it was especially a thrill for you to connect with him again and tell him you're right with him and supporting him. I love that. Did everyone have to get a COVID test, by the way?
Only the people who were going to be in close proximity to the president. So a lot of the Secret Service agents that are based in Arizona were getting tested when I was getting tested. Our congressional delegation had all gotten tested. So it wasn't a huge amount of people, but anybody that was going to be within, 4 feet to get COVID tested.
Okay, well, I'm so glad that they did. It's really, really good. We got to keep our president safe. I want to turn and ask you, though, about the border wall. I know that the one reason the president came was to tour the border wall and the growth of it and all of that. But have you been down there recently to see the progress of the border wall in Arizona?
I haven't been down for probably about a year now, because, you know, we haven't gone all the way to the border. I've been to border communities like Cochise County and Sierra Vista and Douglas, but not actually at the wall. And so it was pretty exciting just to see the film of the president with the great Border Patrol agents and with, you know, the delegation from Arizona. You know, Congressman Gosar and Congresswoman Lesko were right there by his side along with Senator McSally. And, you know, just celebrating that we are securing our border and how many fewer illegal border crossings there actually have been since President Trump has implemented the wall. And he did say yesterday, you know, it's over with the Democrats with the wall. The wall is going to be, you know, it's being built and it's going to be finished. So, you know, they've lost that battle, which I'm glad, because border security is national security. We're seeing a lot of trouble in Yuma, Arizona. You probably heard that Arizona has a COVID surge that's going on. Well, the hot spots are right along the border where people are coming into the United States to seek care. Many of those thousands of people who are being brought in to our state and testing positive are Mexican nationals, not American citizens.
Boy, we're going to talk about that on tomorrow's show, that some of the numbers that you're seeing going up from COVID, in fact, a significant number, are coming from people crossing the border into America trying to get medical care, which doesn't, I'm not commenting one way or the other whether they should do that, but just on the notion that, you know, we shouldn't have that statistical point drive our policy in America about whether we open up more or keep shutting down. So one last thing I want to ask you. So you're chairman of, first of all, I don't think I've talked to you in so long. I didn't know if I ever said congratulations on the unbelievable excitement that you became chairman of the Arizona GOP, because that was a party that, well, it needed uniting of all segments of the party. And if anyone was the one to do it, you were. So how's that going? How's the GOP in Arizona flying?
Oh my gosh, it is so great. And you're right. I was a long shot to win by the establishment view, because for the most part, conservatives don't win the position as the chairman of the party. And a lot of times when they do, they use that power of that position to, like, bludgeon the people who were mean to them or against them during the time that they were doing something else. And I had my share of that. But what I decided was I would not let one drop of Republican talent go to waste. I don't care where you see yourself on the spectrum. If you think you're a liberal Republican or you're a super ultra conservative Republican, there is something that you can bring to the table in our party. As long as you're believing in faith, family, and freedom, which are the tenets of the Republican Party, we can find a place for you. And so we've really, really gotten strong. The Democrats want us to be in disharmony, because when we're united, we are strong and we're unbeatable. So the entire time that I've been in, that's what I've been working to build, is a united Republican Party ready to win in 2020.
Oh, I just love that. I honestly wish every GOP chair in this country and every other state could hear what you're saying. I mean, there are a wide range of people chairing this various state GOP parties, but the concept of our party needing to be united, to accept the fact, I always say in my show, we're in the same side of the aisle, maybe different pews, and all in the same pew, but we're in the same side of the aisle. We've got to come together, and so I'm grateful that you have that message, and that's how you're running the GOP in Arizona. Okay, so one last thing, Kelli, I have seen polls, I'm sure you have too, that are sounding like, the media is just, of course, so excited about these polls, that now that the Democrats have really settled on Biden as their nominee, who I still don't think will be their nominee when it gets to November, but whoever it is, you see polls talking about that Joe Biden is really pulling ahead and that he is going to end up handily beating President Trump. So what's your take on that?
Well, I mean, they told us the same thing in 2016, that Hillary was invincible, unbeatable, the queen of the world. They do a lot of funny polling right now, where they either poll all across the United States. They don't really poll people who have ever voted or have been reliable voters. They poll many more Democrats than Republicans, and they skew the data to present a picture that they want to present. And it has been hard to watch these gleeful fake news media talking heads saying, Biden's up by 10, Biden's up by 14.
Yeah.
And what I wonder is, who are these delusional people that would pick a person that 55% of the electorate think has the senility, early stages or late stages of dementia, to lead the greatest country in the world, and really to lead the world. So I don't think Trump derangement syndrome is that deep that we would actually end up with him. I think there is a lot bigger silent majority than there even was in 2016. I think we're going to see those minority communities come to the table, many of whom are fearful. You don't even have to be in a minority community to be fearful of these radical, progressive, anarchist leftists that are out there raping, pillaging, murdering, and looting these Democrat cities across the nation. When you see that, I don't know how any sane person could want that for the entire United States.
I could not agree more. I think the Democrat just utter silence on the rampaging in this country, the destruction of our historical monuments all over the country, and really allowing, as you're describing, the raging and pillaging and burning of cars and smashing of store windows and the theft, and just literally, as they say, radio silence from most Democrat leaders in Washington. You can barely find a voice to say, golly gee, maybe we shouldn't let this happen. So I think it's funny, Kelli, you mentioned too about the sense of pressure people feel not to speak up. I have had people who say to me, even here in Dallas, which is Democrat run but has a very healthy Republican base, saying, I'm not putting a Trump-Pence sign in my yard. I'm going to vote for him. Yep. I think he's great. I'm on his side, but I'm not putting a sign out there. It's astonishing the capacity the leftists have had in just making people feel afraid to stand up for President Trump, because they feel because then you're a racist. So one thing, I guess, going back to you and closing out, so the GOP in Arizona is working hard to get people on board for the 2020 elections. Do you feel a sense of energy and support for President Trump in Arizona?
Oh my gosh, so much. Yeah. And what he said yesterday was that if you don't, toe the line with the orthodoxy of the left, then they want to not just make you be quiet, they want to destroy you. Well, that cancel culture is going to end. Come November 3rd, 2020, November 4th, we're going to wake up. President Trump is going to be back in the office of the presidency. We're going to have the United States Senate. We're going to have control, and hopefully we are going to take back the House, and we can get some sanity back into this nation.
And that's a fabulous note to wrap up. Kelli Ward, thank you so much for joining me today on America Can We Talk.
Thanks, Debbie. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Okay, man, that is one energetic, really just a candidate advocate. She's someone who's just, from the time she was a state senator in Arizona, from the time that President Trump declared he was going to run for the presidency, she ran for the U.S. Senate twice from Arizona. And as you may have caught in some of the implications, some of the things she was saying, she ran and really had the old line GOP establishment in Arizona attack her as just kind of you haven't paid your dues, you aren't the designated candidate, you're not allowed to run. She does a fabulous job. She's just not just full of energy, but clarity and passion and intelligence, and she's wildly well informed on every issue. She's really able to speak the issues. So she's a gem for the Republican Party. So glad you could join me today, and glad to hear about a great event that was last night in Arizona. So I want to turn to my next little topic today. I want to hit on, we've had in the show before, we had these two young men who came to America from Venezuela, and they came here in part because, or they came here maybe to go to school, but they have stayed, and what they're doing now is touring the country trying to tell people you don't want America to become socialist. They're telling from their firsthand life story what it's like to live in Venezuela, how the country collapsed under socialism, the utter and pure misery that the majority of Venezuelans live in. So these two young men have been doing this. Well, I found another voice, a young woman, and she's also from Venezuela, and she's talking about and trying to help people understand that what we're watching the leftists permit in our country. We're watching the Antifa, the BLM Inc. You have the radical left not just burning buildings, destroying property, burning cars, stealing, literally murdering police officers and others, but you have them just on a rampage, destroying statues, destroying the symbols of our history, our symbols that tell the American story. I want you to play this as a short clip this young lady has done. I asked Matt the Wonderful to play that. We'll talk about it a little bit more.
Why do I even worry about some silly little statues coming down or some silly little street names changing? Why do I care? It's because the last time I didn't care about this, I was a teenager. I have already lived through this thing when I was living in Venezuela. Statues came down. Chavez didn't want that history displayed. And then he changed the street names. Then came the curriculum. Then some movies couldn't be shown on certain TV channels. And so on and so forth. You guys think it can't happen to you? I've heard this so many times. But always be on guard. Never believe something can't happen to you. You need to guard your country and your society or it will be destroyed. We didn't believe it could happen to us. Us Venezuelans, Cubans warned us. And we're like, Venezuela, we know what freedom is like. That's not going to happen here. Yet it happened. And there's clearly a lot of people wanting to destroy the U.S.
That was actually a video from TikTok, which is not one of those apps I use. But she's doing the same thing that other young Americans are doing, people now in America who grew up in Venezuela, trying to say, America, wake up. Do not let America go socialist. She's talking about, which I want to hop on talking with her about her a little bit today. She's talking about the tactic of tearing down statues, renaming streets. All of it can seem as though in our country, they seem like easy concessions. They seem like, oh, if we will just agree to remove all symbols of the Civil War, for example, if we just remove all those symbols, then everything can be peaceful again. And we're not going to have riots in our streets. We're not going to have citizens, destroying buildings and burning cars and stealing property and destroying people's businesses they spent their whole life building. All that will end if we just concede that they can take down statues. Okay, or maybe take down statues and change the names of certain streets. Okay, no more streets named after anyone that the left has designated as no longer patriotic, as no longer tolerable. So that they want to rename the streets all sorts of things that symbolize the radical left, that symbolize radical leftism. Again, an easy concession to make. It can seem to people like, well, it's just a simple concession. That's all they want. If we just give in to this, then we can buy peace. And I've been on this theme, and I'm going to stay on this theme for as long as the problem seems to be staring us in the face. It is just like negotiating with terrorists. It's just like it. Ronald Reagan was exactly right when he said back when he was president, we don't negotiate with terrorists. Not just because they're bad people, and terrorists are bad people, but because it's never enough. There are never enough concessions that you can make. There are never enough things you can concede, and then they will back down. Those things, that is factually inaccurate. She's pointing out, it's just a step along the way. This young girl from Venezuela, the next step you do, okay, we're going to let statues go down, and we're going to change names of streets, and of course, curriculum public school must comply with what the leftists want in this country. And she's getting at what so many totalitarians have done throughout the, not just centuries, but millennia, but certainly in her country, in Venezuela, Chavez, the people forget who they are. They forget their history. They forget the whole of who they are as a people, how we got here, where we are today. All the people know is what the government tells you when you get up in the morning. And that government, that totalitarian, leftist, Marxist government that has now destroyed Venezuela, one of the most productive, free, prosperous countries in South America, destroyed in the span of 20 or 25 years because people didn't see it coming. People didn't think the little concessions they made were going to mean anything, that we can concede these things and then we could get to go back to normal and we can still be Venezuela and we can still have our freedom and prosperity. And she's saying it doesn't work that way. Every concession you make to leftists only causes them to bring more concessions until you've lost your collective love of your history, your understanding of who you are as a people, even street names. The answer to all of these demands from the left in America needs to be no, 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 and no. And she's making this point because she's living here and she feels like the deja vu. She saw this happen in Venezuela. Do not let it happen here. I'm going to go back, by the way, in the next few weeks at the two young men I had in the show before, if you happen to see that show, but they were from Venezuela, and they both were really articulate, explaining what they are trying to do in their conversations in America, and they're trying to talk on college campuses. And because right now it's so trendy on college campuses to be a leftist, to express kind of a warm, fuzzy feelings about socialism, and to be utterly anti-American and anti-capitalist and anti-freedom and anti-free markets and anti-entrepreneurship. The cool thing on campus is to hate everything that made America great and prosperous and free, that lifted even the poorest among us to a better lifestyle than almost everyone in the world has. That's what capitalism and freedom have done, and yet if you go to college campuses, it's barely acceptable to even talk about the beauties, the virtues of freedom and free market. So I wanted to play her tape. I urge you to share it with your friends. And I've been talking in the show a lot recently about the idea of sharing things with your friends. If you aren't comfortable sharing ideas and having a debate, a political debate, try sharing videos. Just share, say, hey, I saw this video. What do you think about this? You can share that one. You can share others I've played on the show and others I will play over the next few weeks. But it's really, and months, it's really important to understand there are voices in our culture trying to tell us, trying to wake us up, help us see that we are capitulating our country, capitulating the values of America, all with the false notion that somehow if we just surrender enough to the left, then we get to have America back. We'll never get America back. We will lose America if we continue conceding to the demands of the Antifa radical Marxist socialist communists who have taken over today's Democrat Party. And if you don't think they've taken over today's Democrat Party, name me one Democrat who is in the slightest criticizing the behavior of the left, in the slightest coming on publicly in public speeches and saying, hey, wait, we really can't be doing this. We better back down. We better back off here. You can't find a Democrat to do it. The Democrats own these riots. The Democrat Party they own these riots. They own the destruction. They own the property damage. They own the loss of life. They own the loss of the innocent life of police officers and other innocent bystanders. The Democrat Party owns it because they won't condemn it. One more thing I want to hit on today. There was a story probably a lot of you saw related to NASCAR. And, there was this story, which I think most of you saw, which was there is a NASCAR driver. First of all, I didn't even know. I'm not a NASCAR person. I think it's great. Whatever people want to do for fun, it's great with me. NASCAR hasn't been my thing, but it's very, very popular in the South. I didn't even know where the Talladega was, but turns out it's in Alabama. And at the NASCAR Talladega racetrack, there is a driver who is named Bubba Wallace. It's an African-American Alabama citizen who became part of NASCAR. In fact, he was the one who was pushing for NASCAR to get rid of the Confederate flag symbol, which they had somewhere at NASCAR. But what happened in the last few days is really, really instructive on a lot of points, and I'm not just going to sit here and tell you the story. I want to tell you, as I often say about this show, why it matters to you, why you need to care what happened, why you need to understand the political influences that got us here. So this driver, Bubba Wallace, every driver or car, I guess, has his own little garage type thing, and Bubba Wallace claimed, or he went into his garage or his, whatever it's called, assigned area, and found in his stall at Talladega and found a noose. He found a rope tied in the shape of a noose. And so, of course, he contacted the people of NASCAR, and within a very short amount of time, the NASCAR put out a statement. They were outraged by someone apparently having left a noose in this stall for this one black driver, Bubba Wallace, of NASCAR. And so the NASCAR officials came out with a very, very, very strong statement denouncing it, and they're, of course, outraged. The governor of Alabama, a woman named Kay Ivey, she came out with a blistering statement about how she's shocked and appalled to hear of yesterday's vile act against Bubba Wallace in Talladega. There's no place for this disgusting display of hatred in our state. Racism and threats of this nature will not be condoned or tolerated. Even Nikki Haley, the former U.S. ambassador under President Trump, former U.S. governor, potential presidential candidate, came out with a very, very, very strong tweet denouncing this and wrote, "We should all stand with @Bubba Wallace today against the cowards who secretly put the noose in his garage stall. Watch your back, cowards. Bubba has a bigger army than you do. #hate won't win. #we stand with Bubba." That was Nikki Haley. And so, as you likely know, there was an investigation, of course. The FBI sent 15 agents down to Alabama to do the inspection, to do the investigation, to find out where this news came from, who put it there. Obviously, they're trying to dive in and figure out who put this there, what was the motive, is there, because obviously it could be a federal hate crime if they discover that someone had done this. So, as you likely know, as it turned out, it was not a noose at all. They have, in all of the stalls for the drivers, they have pull-down garages, and because I guess the garage door is heavy, they have a rope, and at the end of the rope, they have, instead of just holding the rope, they make a what they thought was a noose. They make a circle because it's easier. Put your hand through, and that makes it easier to pull down the garage door. That was what was on the floor of Bubba Wallace's stall at Talladega. On top of that, the investigation revealed that very piece of rope with a small hand pole on it had been there since November of 2019 and was not a noose. It was just something that's in numerous other garages, is what they used to pull down the door. So I'm obviously very glad there wasn't a noose put in Bubba Wallace's stall. But what I want to talk with you about for the rest of the show today is the idea of where we are politically in this country, how we got to the point that we had that kind of reaction, and what I think really would be a great lesson for all of us to learn. Number one, stop and think about the fact that the FBI sent 15 agents down to NASCAR because of what appeared to be a noose. Now, no one was injured. No one was, if it had been a noose, it would have been a threat, but no verbal threats, no physical confrontation. No one had been injured. No one had been killed. No property had been damaged. There was just a noose. And I do understand that the noose is a symbol, very, very ugly symbol, of the time in the South, in the Democrat-run South, where lynchings occurred. And people who were in lynch mobs, KKK, again, Democrat-run, Democrat KKK, Democrat South, in the era when there were lynchings, they occurred because lynch mobs would grab someone who they thought had done something wrong, and no following of the justice system, know what they're supposed to be doing, and literally hang Black Americans who were the victims of these lynch mobs. So the noose has an ugly historic symbolism. It is not nothing. It is an ugly historical symbolism. And so the FBI, so on the FBI to start with, 15 agents. Now, I'm going to guess that there are unsolved murders, kidnappings, rapes, just horrific crimes in this country. But still, we had the FBI sending 15 agents down because someone thought they found a noose, and there was never any picture of it, or ultimately what was shown as a picture was, the rope with a little tiny circle at the bottom, which is the hand pull to close the garage door. But the FBI reacted by sending down 15 agents. You can say that's a good thing because, for people who try to claim that the criminal justice system is inherently racist, that there is a systemic racism problem, and that the justice system is unconcerned about Black victims in this country, you can say, well, actually, that was a huge reaction of the FBI to say, if anything like this has happened, even appears to have happened, we're sending down major league forces, 15 people, to look into the case of one non-noose in a garage at the Talladega for a Black NASCAR driver. 15 people. The good interpretation is great proof that there is just unwillingness to tolerate anything like that in America. But the other point about the FBI is this. As I've been talking about on this show, the left's determination, just visceral determination, to drive this country apart, to drive a wedge in America, to separate people by races, to drive America into racial suspicion, racial hatred, racial distrust, to place every American in a hyphenated group silo that says we have, Caucasian Americans and African Americans and Asian Americans, Hispanic Americans, and everyone lives in their silo, and the Democrat Party runs all of them, keeps all of them pitted against each other, all of them competing against each other. This is the MO of the Democrat Party. And part of the MO, as we talked about, and we're going to continue talking about, of the radical left, the communist history of America, starting back in 1920, when the communists were cooking up these ideas, was the idea you have to try to divide America by race. The Communist Party, in its own words, in its own documents, was realizing that they could not convince America in the 1920s, prosperous America, where abundance flowed, where even the poorest Americans were doing better than almost everyone else in the whole rest of the world. America was a country where there was just booming prosperity and opportunity. Communists had a very hard time. They recognized we're going to have a very hard time convincing America of the virtues of government-controlled society, government-controlled economy, socialism, and then communism, because Americans could see the virtues of freedom, free markets, and capitalism. So the communists decided the only way to divide America is by race. I've been on this subject for days. I will continue on. It is a tactic the leftists, the communists, identified and used and still use today. And this is what the left in America is doing today. This is what got launched under and perpetuated under President Obama. 8 years of the Obama presidency. Very left-wing guy. Very left-wing determination to move this country more toward socialism, more toward government-controlled society, more toward government-controlled industry. The Marxist instinct of President Obama was to grow the power of the federal government, grow the regulation of the federal government, to tamp down on excesses of success in America, to try to thwart the virtues and benefits of freedom and free markets and capitalism and entrepreneurship. You had the radical left under President Obama working to undermine the greatness of America's free market system and the basic core assumption, the cultural liberty of America. And so you had, as the media followed suit, whatever President Obama wanted, the media followed suit. And so you had more and more characterization of issues in this country as racist, more and more characterization by the Obama administration that anyone on the conservative side, on the Republican side, on the GOP side, there was always a hint of, the right wing in this country, they're really the extremists. They're really the ones out there. They're really dangerous to this country. At the same time, as the left, led by Obama, was the dangerous attack on America, on the constitutional structure of government, on the idea of limited government, on the idea of a robust free market system. As the left in this country intellectually under Obama and the media following suit drove America more toward radical leftism, more toward Marxism, more toward government-controlled society, at the same time, they worked to manipulate the American political conversation, to manipulate the way Americans think about freedom and free markets, so that the idea of right wing, which could just mean conservative, people who like the Constitution and support limited government, began to be cast by the Obama administration as questionable and kind of dangerous and kind of out there, not too sure about these people. This was very intentional. And so you had, for example, on the Obama administration, the whole industry of trying to characterize conservatism as radical and dangerous emerged and grew. So you had, for example, people talking about, we need to have a secure border. People talking about we need to have some kind of fixing of our immigration system. So we have citizenship means something again. So we do something about the millions of people living in America illegally. Any kind of talk about trying to fix problems created, not just under the Obama administration, but for years before that, were labeled and tagged by the media, by the left, by the leftist pundits as dangerous, radical, kind of racist, kind of fringy. And so you had even the idea in America, you had a very determined effort of the leftists to continue to drive this wedge in American society and to characterize ideas of people on the right as kind of racist. If you didn't want to go along with securing the border, if you wanted a secure border, you were probably kind of racist. You don't like people who don't look like you. You don't want people coming here who don't look like you. That was the argument of the left when people said we want to have a secure border, we want to have an immigration system that works. The argument of the left, the Obama-led media, was to call that racist. And I'm getting at the idea, the determination of the left to infuse American political culture with suspicion of racism, with suspicion of the existence of a vast right-wing opposition that is racist in nature. That was a mission of the Obama administration. It wasn't just an unfortunate and unintended side effect. It was a mission of the Obama administration to instill doubts in the hearts and minds of Americans, doubts about their fellow citizens, suspicion about racism. Now, I'll be clear. There are white supremacist groups in this country. They have no political home. White supremacist groups are evil. They are wrong. They have no place in America, no place in either political party or anywhere. They're flat out evil. They have no place in America. They are not honored by either political party. You don't hear anyone on either political side of the aisle, either side of the aisle, saying white supremacy is okay. It's horrible. It obviously exists, and there are probably more people in America, however, who believe that the earth is flat than actually embrace white supremacy. But I want to get at saying, of course there are white supremacists, and they're evil, and we see them sometimes in marches, and everyone of all political stripes deplores them, deplores what they stand for, denounces them, will not accept them. So getting back around to where we are with this whole NASCAR story, I think 8 years of President Obama and the left that followed him along, and the journalists in this country who worked so hard to just push the Obama agenda, which was the left-wing agenda, which was the Marxist agenda, which was to divide people, make them all suspicious of each other. That agenda really has seeped its way, made its way into many avenues, many places in America's culture. So, back to the FBI. I don't know if Christopher Wray, running the FBI, sent 15 agents down over a noose, apparently, which wasn't a noose, but people thought it was noose, sent 15 agents down because a noose was found in a black NASCAR driver's stall. Whether he sent 15 agents because it was a show of, we denounce racism, we're going to fight it, we're going to get to the bottom of this immediately. I don't know if that was the reason, or the reason that maybe he is among those in our culture. And there are millions of them who have unconsciously, subconsciously bought into the effort, the lies about America that got pushed on America by the Marxists, by the leftists, who want Americans to think the country is more racist than it is. I'm not saying there are no racists. There are racists in every country on the planet Earth. There are racists of every skin color on the planet Earth. No one's saying that no racism exists. But the picture of America as a barely seething beneath the surface, outrage racism, that is just waiting to explode. That was the picture of America that President Obama tried to paint, that the leftists who followed him tried to paint, that the media tried to paint. And so you have Christopher Wray heading up the FBI. He hears about a noose, and he sends down 15 agents, as I say, whether or not it's because he thought that would be a show of opposition to white supremacy, or because he thought, this is the biggest problem ever. We have seething racism and just, widespread white supremacy in this country, and this is a major emergency. I don't know what drove him, but obviously he sent 15 agents down to Talladega to discover that there was no noose. I wish there could be, but there was an FBI statement issued just saying what they have now figured out. They said on Monday, this is the FBI statement, on Monday, 15 FBI special agents conducted numerous interviews regarding the situation at Talladega Superspeedway. After a thorough review of the facts and the evidence surrounding this event, we've concluded that no federal crime was committed. NASCAR also had, said that it appeared that there wasn't a noose, it was a hand pull. And so what I want to really close out today, because I'm running out of time here, I want to close out today is just saying this about that. We have to be conscious of how successful the leftists in this country have been in stirring up racial suspicion, racial distrust, the false belief that America is a nation seething with racism, that right below the surface there's just racism brewing everywhere. We have to fight that. We have to fight that characterization of America because it's not true. Because the vast majority of Americans of every race, ethnicity, national origin, skin color, pretty much go about their day every day trying to live their life in freedom, to love their neighbors themselves. They don't spend time trying to think about attacking other people because of their skin color. This is simply not what America is. But when America is the evidence that's overwhelming that America has a wonderful culture, a wonderful rich culture, and mix of people of various races, ethnicities, and national origins, because we're not a country founded on race, national origin, or ethnicity. We're a country founded on ideas. Those very ideas of America's founding are what created this country. And when the world can see that, and Americans can see that we're doing a great job. We do a great job, this wonderful, whatever you want to call it, melting pot or whatever term you want to use. America has done a beautiful job of coming together as a people and standing against racism, standing against discrimination, standing against bigotry. Yes, we always have more improvements we can make. We always have more ways we can try to be better as a people and make a more perfect union. But America is a good and noble country, not filled with the racists the left so desperately wants America to think are out there. So you had a Nikki Haley assuming just because the story came out, a noose was left, and she blasts right away. The governor, the Republican governor of Alabama, she blasts right away about racism and intolerance. What I would love to see happen is more and more Americans becoming aware that America is actually a good and noble and great country filled with good people who are not racist, who are not trying to foment racial tension, who are not intolerant of each other. I would love for the next time any incident like this happens to have the reaction of the Nikki Haley's, the governors, everybody to say, that doesn't sound good. Let's have an investigation. Let's be sure we understand what happens. We need to back off the ledge of we just jump over the cliff and assuming the worst when an allegation, a story like this comes out. And it's really a disservice to the good people of America, to the vast majority, the 99% of Americans who do not spend their time focusing on race and feeling intolerant of other people because of their skin color. Because what we're really doing when we do that, we have the Nikki Haley reaction and the governor's reaction, we're buying into what the left has been trying to do, not just for the previous 8 years under President Obama, but for decades before, to work to divide America by race, to make us suspicious of each other, to make us resentful of each other. This is a leftist tactic used to gain political power. And the best remedy is for all of America in rejecting it is just don't play their game. If you have a story of a noose, you have a story of something written on a wall, something that appears to be racist, of course we investigate. Of course we look into it, get to the bottom of it. But we should be assuming in this country that we are a country filled with good people. The American people deserve the benefit of the doubt. The American people deserve the investigation before we even conclude that anything bad really happened. We deserve the presumption of goodness, the presumption of innocence, the presumption not just of individual people at NASCAR, but the American people as a whole deserve the presumption of innocence that says we're not going to just buy in hook, line, and sinker because someone said, I think something racist happened. We look into it, we investigate, we prosecute if needed, but we deserve better than to have the immediate pouncing with the leftists hoping will happen. The immediate pouncing and criticism of racism, because whenever you say there's racism out there, it's a racist country, you're accusing the entire people of America, the good people of America, and America doesn't deserve that accusation. There may be individuals who do, we'll investigate, we'll go after them, but America does not deserve the ugly accusations that are made so often against the people itself, the country itself. America is better than that, and they deserve better than that. At the close of every show, I always do, I turn and tell you why the stories you talked about today matter to you. So I will start first. Our first story today, we had the Flynn case ruling. We'll have to talk more about this. We'll see what Emmett Sullivan's going to do. But D.C. Appeals Court panel rules 2-1 to order Judge Sullivan to dismiss the case against Flynn. Will the deep state appeal to an en banc hearing at the circuit court, or even try to take it to the Supreme Court? News struck notes just discovered after 3+ years by the FBI DOJ and turned over the court yesterday. Comey reportedly says Flynn Kislyak calls were legitimate, so no reason to even be prosecuting Flynn. Obama wants to be sure the right people are on the case. Biden wants to use the Logan Act to go after Flynn. Translation: Obama, Biden were manufacturing the federal investigation of the Trump campaign. The truth is shouting at Barr and Durham and at the American people. Obama and Biden and their administration criminally defiled the peaceful transition of power, abusing the machinery of law enforcement. They were acting to overthrow the Constitution. The question is, do Americans care? And on Venezuela, statues and communism, the Venezuelan woman's warning, we played the tape earlier, her warning matters to all Americans. Do not be distracted by arguments about good statues and bad statues. Do not be distracted by arguments about the precise definition of socialism. Destroying statues is about destroying debate and free speech and controlling thought. Socialism, Marxism, communism, and collectivism, all are anti-American, all are anti-freedom. What happened in Venezuela, once the richest country in South America, can happen here. Stopping it requires awakened American patriots by the millions who are willing and able to resist the mob. Evil is never as strong as it appears, but it must be confronted. And on NASCAR and the Non-Noose, NASCAR has always been a ruling class elitist target. Southern, racist, hillbilly rednecks. That's how the left and the media see NASCAR. The news story was kind of weird from the beginning, as no pictures of the alleged noose were shared. Nikki Haley and the governor of Alabama and the head of NASCAR jumped on the outraged train. FBI sends 15 special agents to investigate. 15. The pathology of America's current atmosphere was created by the ongoing leftist Marxist ideological assault on America, so that leaders have been conditioned to assume the worst about Americans. DOJ, FBI have been conditioned to believe that white supremacist extremists are a widespread problem when they're not. And leftists need Americans to be suspicious. Leftists need Americans to be suspicious of each other, so we'll go along with their destruction of this country. The truth? America is filled overwhelmingly with good and noble people. And that, my very fine friends, is America Can We Talk for today. I'm Debbie Georgatos. You can email me at americacanwetalk@gmail.com. You know the deal on social media. Like, share, subscribe. Help me to grow this show. If you enjoy learning from the show, you like what you're hearing, I urge you to go to our website, americacanwetalk.org. On that homepage, you can hit the subscribe button, put your email in. You get a once-a-week email. I never share the email list. It goes just to me, and I put a once-a-week email out to you. Great way to catch up on the show on Saturday if you're working during the week, and a great way to share the show. Love to have you subscribe. And if you are listening to the show and you like what you learn, please consider supporting the show. This show is completely listener supported. I don't have advertisers. I don't have disruptions on the website, on the YouTube channel. I just am trying to talk to you about the unique, extraordinary importance of America. And I would love your financial support if you can help me. On the home page at americacanwetalk.org, you can hit the donate button. You can choose a one-time subscription. You can choose a recurring subscription or donation. Either way would be extremely helpful to me, one-time or recurring. Would love to have your support and love to be able to continue doing the show for a really, really long time because I love speaking up about the unique, extraordinary greatness of America. I do this show to speak up for America because America matters. And I will talk to you next time.
America, Can We Talk? Truth about America.